So I know what you're thinking. You're like, why did you title this video Inferno? Isn't that Red Alert? And technically, you would be right. But technically, you would also be wrong. Because it is the body of Red Alert, but with the spark of Inferno. And I'm not meaning G1 Inferno. This is the Predacon Beast Wars Inferno. And the reason he got this body was Unicron. Now, if you're not all sorts of confused, we'll get into it, okay? So as a quick breakdown of this guy's history, in an alternate timeline of the Beast Wars, Inferno got destroyed just like he did in the main timeline. However, somehow his spark survived his body's destruction. Well, at that point, Unicron plucked his spark and pulled it into the reality where the Universe War was taking place. And in another reality, a version of Red Alert ended up falling in combat. Well, Unicron likewise plucked his body and pulled it into the same reality that that version of Inferno Spark ended up in. Well, just like Starscream, who will take over the body of a dead dude to come back to life, apparently Inferno followed suit, and now he looks like this. Which, as you can see, him and one of his mold mates, the universe version of G1 Sunstreaker, you can see that they're both rocking their rocket boosters, which is one of the things that I've always liked about this mold. Now, as one thing you might notice is they have actually removed the light bar on him, and as you'll see later, they have actually removed it on his twin, which is weird because, as we'll see in robot mode, these are kind of necessary for something later on. So as you can see here without their jet booster glory, that these guys actually look pretty cool in just their standard vehicle mode. But I do like the way these guys look together. Yet, could we do a guy that was using a Red Alert body style without pulling in the Kingdom Red Alert? I don't think so. And you know what's funny is I love that each one of these has a similar aesthetic, but yet it still has its own vibe. And I mean, obviously that's to be expected with a 2001 mold versus a 2021 mold. So, you know, what am I asking for here? And here he is with his original Beast Wars figure. And perhaps it is ironic that we are doing a version of Inferno, considering that he is the next guy that's probably going to be announced by Hasbro, considering that they always like to tease upcoming figures. And if you guys noticed in Metroplex's box art, it showed our boy here getting wrecked, which, you know what, that's not totally inaccurate, but I'm just a little bit saddened that they're showing a little bit of disrespect to one of our Beast Wars homies. However, with these figures and such, you can see that his original figure dwarfs the figure that they used as his future self, so I don't think this is entirely in scale, because in the Universe War, when they came back, even Maximals ended up being the size of Autobots instead of much smaller like they were in the cartoon. So I don't really consider this canonical scale, but it is nice to just kind of see the dramatic differences between what he used to be and what he ended up being. So here's our boy in robot mode, and I gotta say that, you know, obviously again, this is the reuse of the 2001 Prowl mold, so he's got the car doors that have become like the samurai side armor for his lower half. He's rocking the huge upper shoulders, which we'll get to eventually. And also on his right arm is the repurposed cannons. Now in the fiction, at least on the wiki, it says that he was a little bit upset that his new weapons actually put out fires instead of starting them. Which is a little bit weird because, as you can see, the missiles are modeled on flames. And technically, I guess you could assume that was water, because here we look at the missiles that Sideswipe is sporting right now, and I mean, obviously that looks like fire, and I can see how, you know, this could be water, but I kind of like the idea of him actually having a water cannon. But you know what? It's whatever way you want to use it, fire or water. And you know what? Even the dynamic color difference, him sporting more red and a little bit of white with this guy sporting mostly white with a little bit of red, I just like the dynamic of it, and it is kind of interesting to see what these guys looked like, because, you know, this is the G1 Sideswipe. He did get reformatted by Unicron into looking like this. He didn't have to, you know, steal a dead dude's body like Inferno did. However, these boys look sick. However, in the story, this guy was actually freed with a bunch of other prisoners by none other than the main timeline Optimus Primal, after he was resurrected by Primus and Alpha Trion to lead the forces of Primus against Unicron's minions. And so it's funny that a post-Beast Machines Optimus Primal now has a Inferno that actually swore loyalty to his new royalty. Now he's a loyal follower of Optimus Primal, which, as you can see in this art, he actually is among the troops that Optimus Primal is commanding, going up against other whack dudes, which we will come back to here in a minute. So guys, I know that, you know, I'm dropping the fiction of why he's named Inferno, but I mean, the real reason is that in 2003, Hasbro was just trying to keep their trademark, and so instead of calling him Red Alert, they just used the Inferno name, which confused everybody until we actually received the fiction. But anyway, that aside, guys, I just wanted to show you how they looked when they finally were stacked up to each other. One thing I wanted to go ahead and mention is that when you look at this guy's box art versus like the full-on figure, it is drastically different as far as the color placements, because it shows him having like these blue eyes. Yet when you look at him, the actual figure is kind of this reddish gray. And then, I mean, just the different, I mean, it's all sorts of off. So, I don't, you know, evidently there was a lack of communication going on there. And apparently, because if you look, instead of the flames on his box art, he's got water cannons on the right hand. I mean, what further proof of not communicating do we really need? I told you that we would get back to the minions of Unicron. So, as we see here, our boy is loyally fighting alongside his new royalty. And I'm looking at him squaring off against Skywarp, and I'm like, can you imagine the sort of dialogue and exchange these two would have whenever they're fighting each other?
For the glory of the royalty! Stand your ground, traitor!
Look out behind you!
Problems too tough for you?
If it's battle you want, let it begin!
Pulling back from his little squabbles in the universe war, we had to take a look at him at least with his original figure. And you can see now that we've actually reached robot mode, the disparity between their sizes feels like a lot less, because the thing is, you know, what gives him a lot of his size in beast mode is how his legs are all splayed out. And to be honest, in vehicle mode, he condenses down, it feels like. So it's nice to kind of see them a little bit more in scale with each other. But again, as much as I loved seeing him compared with other figures, this is probably one of my favorite pictures right here with his past and present selves. So depending upon how long you guys have been around the channel, you know that we've actually taken a look at his original 90s figure before. And one of the things that he is infamous for in the show, and I was so glad that his original toy could replicate, was his little roto rear that, you know, in the show he could actually use it to fly around and stuff like that. And so it kind of begs the question, well, you know, if this is, even if it is an alternate version of Inferno, now that he's a car, does that mean that he can't fly? So you guys remember at the beginning of the video whenever I mentioned that the light bar would come back into play later? Well, that's because for all the years and all the iterations I've had this toy, I didn't know that apparently it was designed for you to be able to take his weapons and then you plug them onto the light bars and it gives him a jetpack. Which, you know, technically shouldn't they have had that for Sideswipe, but yet they took the light bar off, yet he's the dude with the jetpack? However, that aside, it now means that this version of Inferno can now fly. But if you're thinking, well, okay, but that's his primary weapons. Doesn't he have anything to defend himself? Well, again, remember, he does have a shield over here on his left arm. But if you look at these shoulders, I also said that we would come back to those too, see? One thing that I've always done for every iteration of Prowl or Inferno or whatever, I've always wondered, could these actually be like giant shoulder cannons? Especially considering how they're designed, it kind of lends itself to the fact that they may actually be at one time intended to be some sort of like maybe cannons or something like that. So we can see our boy here is in the sky fighting against Skywarp, continuing their little squabble. And then I could just imagine him going, our boy is victorious, man. So as you guys can tell, that this figure, while it's got its weird quirks, I think that I definitely enjoy the fact that, yes, this is a version of Inferno, and it's just so atypical and off the wall that I absolutely love it. And again, you know, it was a marketing decision by Hasbro to keep the trademark, but the fact that now it caused such a weird establishment of his fiction is just so oddly amusing. I can't help but like it. So anyway, guys, that was the look at Transformers Universe Inferno. And until next time, guys, we'll see you in another review.
Why does Benny do not think this job so important?
Every job for the royalty is a gift.
That part is major sucker.